your conscious brain steps aside, and that's when, like, creation, like divine inspiration, all these things can kind of start coming in because you're not thinking about it consciously.
Hey winners, and welcome to episode 256 of the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast. This is your bi-weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym. And I am your host, Coach Colt. We've been teaching business on our show lately and how it pertains to online coaching and entrepreneurship. So I thought it would be a perfect time to get to know Andrew Dewar on the show. Andrew Dewar is a serial entrepreneur, a former certified personal accountant, a certified advanced DNA ThetaHealer. His dedication to financial freedom led to national recognition when he achieved the remarkable feat of paying off his mortgage in just 6 years. He co-founded a personal development company called 5 Year You, with the ultimate goal is to help 1 million people become their best selves in 5 years. Andrew frequently speaks on topics including personal development, life coaching, spirituality, growing a small business, and much more than that. Previous podcast appearances, this was a really good one. Business, finance, and soul, discovering the next version of yourself. When I was listening to this one, it actually inspired me to reach out to him and ask if we could talk about some of these topics. And so I got a list of questions for him. He's also been featured on the His and Her Money Show, how Andrew paid off his $320,000 mortgage in just 6 years. All right, so Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. So I've got my notebook out and ready to learn from you, sir. You are speaking to my 23 bodybuilders that I coach on meat-based diets for the most part.
Cool.
Most of our listeners are bodybuilders, people who like to work out, people who are entrepreneurial-minded, people who are go-getters, and a lot of people that like to just learn about Jesus and hear what we talk about there. So welcome to the show, Andrew. Could you just tell us about your... For sure, yeah. Could you just tell us about yourself and give our audience a quick summary of who you are? Let's start with serial entrepreneur. What does that mean?
So serial entrepreneur means that I've always had either a business idea in my mind, or I've always been running a business either in full or on the side. My first one was selling my grandpa's pumpkins in October to people that were looking for a pumpkin for jack-o'-lanterns, and I've done a host of things. I've owned gyms, or a gym. I've owned websites. I've done life coaching and all these other things. And they've always just kind of led me to the next step. So I've always been kind of grateful. And usually when I get the idea to kind of lean into something, I know that it is taking me somewhere. So serial entrepreneur just is a fancy way of saying that I always have a business or 2 or 3 or 10 on the go.
Wow, I love it. So you owned a gym.
Yeah.
Let's start there. What did that look like? What was the name of the gym?
So this was I would say this was like my first.
And I'm sorry, you're located in Canada.
I'm
Canada.
located in Canada, yeah. So I've always been kind of original in my thinking. So I was trying to find a concept that worked, and at the time, my wife really liked the Curves model. Like 30 minutes, you're in, you're out, you get all your stuff, your heart rate up and everything else. And so I really liked that, and there was nowhere to do it. So my buddy and I decided that we would create something similar, but for men, and kind of create a community around that. And we did. And it was, I had never worked in a gym. I had never opened a gym or ran a gym before. And it was really a year of trial by fire, which is, I'm kind of a glutton for punishment that way. And I really enjoyed the process of learning all the things. And after a year or year and a half, we kind of got to that point where we looked at each other and we're like, we're doing okay, but we're not having fun. We're not enjoying this the way we thought we were going to. And that was coinciding with, being pregnant with my first child. And I was really shifting gears, and I'm like, I want to be at home with my daughter, who's now 16. And I
Mhm.
just wanted to make sure that I was enjoying that part of parenting because I really wanted to make sure I was present as much as possible. So we shuttered that business down, and it's one of the harder things to do because like there was you have to. It's not like you just close the doors. We had some loans and stuff. We had to file for. I don't know if it was insolvency or bankruptcy. I can't remember the actual term was, but you do that, and it
Mhm.
really does. It's a gut punch when that kind of stuff happens because it really does impact your ego quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A- And when that happens, at the time when it happens, it hurts and it brings up a lot of. I'm trying not to start twitching as I rehash this old story, but I can look at it now and I'm like, through doing that made me realize I didn't want a brick and mortar business. I didn't want to do certain things that kept me tied to a schedule, and that over time led me to when I would think about new businesses, I would always go like, well, okay, what's the physical commitment? What's the capital commitment? And it made me much leaner with my business starts after that. And the shift to online businesses was really kind of a precipice that I can look back on and look at the steps that business, the gym business was, and then realize, okay, I had to go through that to get to these other ones and to get to where I am right now, which is talking to you, which is fantastic.
Right. Yeah, it's funny how your idea of where you're going in life and God's idea of where you're going in life
Yeah.
sometimes aren't necessarily the same thing. And sometimes he brings up that and sometimes he has to make you aware of that and remind you of that.
Yeah. What's the
Um,
expression? Man plans, God laughs. Like, it's just we have the best intentions of what we want to do, but there's a bigger path for all of us. And the hardest part, I think, sometimes is taking our ego out of that and going, okay, I submit, I will follow whatever plan you have for me. And it can be hard. It can be hard when you have your mindset on certain things.
I love it. I'm so glad that you brought up the word ego because I was totally doing abs earlier today when I was listening to you when I was listening to your podcast again, and it said and one of my biggest takeaways was when you said nothing good happens when you trust your ego more than your intuition. So I actually went so far as to write that down as our verse of the week. We always have a Bible verse of the week and then like a secular just like motivational quote of some sort that I feel
Okay.
like kind of complements the Bible verse. Yeah, so our Bible verse this week is actually from the book of Enoch. So it's not actually, I don't know. I think the book of Enoch is legit. I think it's part of the Bible, but that's a conversation for another day. So, yeah,
I have
Enoch
no clue.
39:7,
So
the right. Enoch 39:7 says, "The righteous and elect before him shall be strong as fiery lights." It's just, it's one of my favorite ones to kind of think and pray about before like before working out or something. But yeah, so on ego and intuition, like what are some steps that you have to make sure that you're making decisions based on your intuition and on what God is telling you versus your ego? Because your ego is really just like a
it's right.
manifestation of pride, right? Ego and pride are
Yeah.
basically the same thing. Tony Robbins says that ego stands for edging God out.
I like that. I've heard that before, and it's a very
Yeah.
powerful one. Honestly, when I have my own processes for kind of deciding what divine power is trying to communicate and what is best for me. I think
Mhm.
in the moment when I'm trying to decide, I try to tune into my heart space and get out of my head. And I even like today, there was countless times. Where I was just like, I would start to get worried about something. I think I told you, like, my son had a fall this morning, and he is very, very strong person, and he was very like, I thought maybe it was a concussion and whatever, but even as I'm working on my stuff while he's sleeping, like these fears pop up, and the ego is like, "Am I doing the right thing? Is this the right thing? What happens if? What happens if? What happens if?" And I've become a very I was numb to my body for the longest time. I just didn't want to feel anything for 30 years, which we can get to it if you want. But
Yeah.
but now I can feel it, in my face, where it's like you are so in your head, it's almost like you're like an inch in front of your face, trying to like predict and predict and predict and be careful, because that's our ego's job. Our ego's job is to keep us safe in the day-to-day life. I spent a
Yep.
lot of time vilifying
Okay.
the ego, and now I'm trying to find that balance where I'm like, you do need it for certain things, but you don't want to rely on it for all things or even certain things ever. So when it comes to me for tuning in, it's just kind of recognizing where the focus is in my body. And normally what I'll do is if I drop into my heart, I really do find that I'm able to that anxiety, like the negative thoughts, the fears, they really do go away when I can tune into my heart and just, be at one with spirit, God, universe, what everybody's got to know their own word for it. Uh I accept all of them, and but that's what I do. I'll just kind of drop into my heart space and try to feel for the truth, the intuition to come forward that way.
For sure. I love it. Um, before I ask you, I have another question for you. Before we switch gears to that, would it be okay if I prayed over your son real quick?
Yeah, for sure. That's
Okay.
very kind.
Heavenly Father, your word says in Isaiah 53:5, we are healed by his wounds. And I'm asking for your healing power upon the son of Mr. Andrew Dewar, that he would hopefully be feeling better. In your name we pray. Amen. Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you
So
very much.
your interview, sir, yeah. So your interview on Business Finance and Soul podcast with Sean Enders,
Mhm.
you used the term midlife awakening as opposed
Yeah,
to midlife crisis. So what's the
right.
difference between the two?
Basically a red Ferrari. No, sorry, bad joke. But what a midlife crisis to me signifies. Um, I think it's the kind of the stereotypes that you'll hear where it's like you have these, the middle of your life is kind of comes up on you and you're like, okay, well, what does that mean for me? And you kind of get, I don't want to say, I don't know what the right word is, but that anxiety that we talked about kind of starts to come up and it's like, I'm not going to be here forever. And I haven't even got to do this thing or that thing. And so it's almost like there's an inner child in you that just decides to go out and party and do the things that it hasn't done yet. And it comes from a very, what I call the outer layer of life. It's kind of very superficial. And I find that a lot of us live on that outer layer of life. And when a midlife awakening is a lot scarier and
Mhm.
it's a lot more powerful at the same time. And it's when you kind of dive into your soul and you connect with it and you're able to realize and recognize that the path you've been on is okay, but there's something different, better, and greater for you if you're willing to accept it. I was not willing to accept it, and my body fought me tooth and nail until I succumbed to it. And so not to be, I'm
Wow.
never going to be the person that's like, and then you just, you see the doves flying over and you go, oh, I've got to go do this now. No, it's a real battle between your ego and with the way you think your life is supposed to be and going towards, what your life is meant to be. So that's
Well,
in a nutshell. It's like one's coming from within, the other is kind of coming more of an outsider type of view of like what do I need to have still? What do I need to buy? What do I need to go experience? And those things still happen on a midlife awakening, except that the awakening is coming from a place of fulfillment, of serving, of gratitude, rather than the outer, which is kind of trying to impress those around us and be you're more worried about the perception.
I love it. I have another question on that, but I kind of wanted to switch gears for just a split second and just address something that I think is kind of interesting. We both have two things in common that not a lot of people have in common, but we're both hockey players and we're both musicians. So,
It's a rare one. That it's not as common as you would think. That's really cool. I didn't know you played hockey. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know that you played hockey either, and I was telling Taylor, I was like, babe, no, I cannot wait to talk to this guy. We've got, he's a hockey player and he's a musician, and I love his views on parenting. I mean, like, no, this is going to be a really cool conversation. So, yeah, where did you, well, first of all, what position do you play?
Uh,
Where
I
did you play?
sh- I played on I shoot left and played on the right wing.
Okay, I shoot.
So
Wow,
winger.
yeah. So I shoot left and played on the right wing all the way up through high school, and then in college I was a stay-at-home defenseman.
Oh, cool. That's a big switch. That's like a huge dude. Good for you because that is hard
I was
to
a yeah, but I
go
was on
from
the check.
offensive to
I was
defensive.
I was always a defensive forward, so I was always like third or
Mm,
fourth line, checking
okay.
line. So like I got the most ice time when we were ahead of the other team.
Okay. So that's it, but still, it's an interesting change to make. But good for you. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
always the goal scorer on the team, and
nice.
again, I just goals made sense to me, and I always tried to. I always called it lightning in a bottle. That feeling you got when you know it. That feeling when you made a good pass. You get it in the gym too. It's kind of like a dopamine hit or like an endorphin rush, but it's
For
like it's
sure.
something stronger than that, and it's
Yeah.
just it's getting in that flow state, and you're like,
Mhm.
it's like you're channeling something different. I've always loved that. I haven't been able to play hockey for about I don't know 6 or 7 years now. So because I had a fall in hockey, and that was where my awakening originally started. Didn't know it for like 4 years until looking back about what was happening, but it's only when we look back on our life that we can connect the dots and the steps that we were led down without our knowledge to get to where we are.
Definitely. I love the terminology that you're using, flow. Getting into a state of flow. I am all about getting into a state of flow. And when you get into that state, it's like time doesn't exist. And it's like
Mm,
everything is effortless, and it's like you don't have to think about it, right? Is that how you would
yeah,
describe it? Okay.
yeah. And I've
What
definitely had
have
games
you
like
have you ever
that.
have you ever read the book? Have you ever heard of the book or read the book, The Inner Game of Tennis?
Is that Arthur Ashe? No,
It's
no.
Tim Galway, and there's like 3 or 4 different versions of it. I think the best version of it, which you would probably like the best, is called The Inner Game of Music. And so it's all about it's all about getting into a state of flow. And it uses and the original book uses it's an old one. It's a classic. It's a subconscious mind book that's just like a total classic,
Cool.
kind of right up there with like Cybernetics and a lot of like Augmandino's books and stuff.
Oh,
But
cool.
it taught, yeah. So it that's kind of like the main so that's kind of like the main thing that it hits on is the power of the subconscious mind, and then it uses tennis as like an analogy to explain how your subconscious mind works and how to get into that state of flow. So then the inner game of music, it's the exact same thing. And then he has a book that's like the inner game of golf, and then like 2 or 3 other ones that and
Okay.
other people have
Cool.
written like updated versions of it. But yeah, that's something that's a state of mind that I try to achieve every time that I play music, and every time that I'm working out too. Actually, I think that working out is done properly is actually very, very creative, and I think that hypertrophy training, bodybuilding in particular, has more in common to do with arts than it does with sports. But what are some steps or just like common practices or tips that you have around getting into that state of flow?
Um, I think for I'll use hockey as an example because I think sports is something that probably your listeners can relate a little bit to more. Um, Having the traditions, I mean, some people call it superstitions, habits, whatever. We all have them, and we experience these habits on a daily basis, and we know that from when we
Yeah,
get out.
hockey players are notorious for being superstitious, bro.
Oh yeah, it's 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 you laugh at it because you know you are, but it really is true. So when it comes to something like that, I would impress this on my son over the years as we would because started playing hockey at a young age, and it was all about getting yourself down the path to letting your conscious mind kind of go a little bit. where you feel things more than you think things. So if you're, hockey players, we all have the certain way that we put our equipment on every morning or every game. And,
Yeah. Do you start
you
with your
put,
shin guards or do you start with your jock strap?
I always start with the jock strap, and then I do left leg, right leg.
Okay.
Even
Okay.
like,
Good.
yeah,
We're the
like,
same way.
yeah. And but even before that, every time I go to my hockey bag, I make sure everything was packed, right? Because the one time you've ever had to drive half an hour back home to get anything that you forgot, you start kind of making the mental note to do that. And I would just
Yeah.
go
You
down
start
and
getting all that anxiety.
yeah, I'm like, I would just start looking at it. I'm like, okay, I just go from like my feet up to my head. I'm like, two skates, two shins, to gloves, to elbow pads. And then I go the singles and I'd be like, pants, jock, shoulder pads, helmet, neck guard, if I was wearing that still, and stick. And I would do it like in, a lot longer than it took for me to say it because I haven't had to do that in several years. But in doing that, I was able to like, it just kind of got me into my okay, this is starting hockey mode. And then I would drive to the rink and I'd listen to the same playlist over and over again. And it was nothing like fantastic. It was just like songs that I liked. But when I listened to them, by the time I got to the rink, I was already in full on game mode. And then I would use the rest of those, the equipment stuff. I get on the ice, I would go skid around twice. And all this stuff just kind of came over years. But by the time I got on the ice, I wasn't thinking anymore. I was just doing everything by habit. And when you do things by habit, you take that conscious part of your brain to step aside and you let like things flow more. So, and we've all experienced, I mean, some people are probably listening to this going, well, that's great, but I don't play hockey. But you have that when you drive, where you'll be like, you drive the same,
Mhm.
the same route every day. You guys say route or route, the Canadian thing kind of maybe just reared its
It's
head there.
definitely route down here.
Route. Okay. Okay. I got it right. And when you do that, you'll have times where you start thinking about something, you have a great idea, and you look back and you think, I've driven a couple of miles and I haven't. I don't know how I did that. Everybody was fine. Nothing bad happened. But your conscious brain steps aside, and that's when like creation, like divine inspiration, all these things can kind of start coming in because you're not thinking about it consciously. And it's kind of like
Yeah,
go ahead.
you're kind of summing up the main premise of like all those books that I just described, bro. It's
Yeah. Oh, good.
yeah. Your conscious mind gets in the way of your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is endless. Like that's where like all of your memories are in your subconscious mind, and
Yeah.
your conscious mind steps on the toes of that creativity, and you just can't tap into it if you're being too critical about how you're playing when you're on the ice, or how you're playing when you're in a rehearsal or on stage or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all about getting that thinking brain off to the side and letting intuition come through. It's a
Yeah.
powerful thing. And I think the hardest part is like we all want to try and create it, but it happens organically. It happens naturally. It's kind of like falling asleep.
Hmm.
You fall
You
asleep
can't
effortlessly
you can't
every
force
night.
creativity.
Yeah, no, you can't. And you can't force falling asleep. The second you think, how do I fall asleep, is the minute that your thinking brain comes back in and goes,
Yep.
oh, I count sheep, right? And like you've never counted sheep before in your life, but today this is, because you got into that space that you're not supposed to think yourself asleep. You can't do that. I mean, at least I've never been able to do that. You have to kind of, like
Yeah.
let that part of your brain step aside while you relax and go into it. And there's a huge it's a different brain wavelength that kind of allows
Yeah.
that to happen. So it's really cool.
Do you know who John Maxwell is?
Yep, I've read a few of his books on leadership and whatnot.
Oh,
John C.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm reading the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth again.
Oh
I
wow,
read it
cool.
10 years ago. Yeah, I read it 10 years ago, back when I was doing a lot of direct selling, um, and a lot of like online business. And So I'm actually revisiting the audiobook now. I'm going through a lot
Yeah.
of the audiobooks of the favorite books that like hardcover books that I've actually read. And
Oh, cool.
yeah, this thing's just filled with gold. I think you would love it. But on a lot of the points that you just talked about. Um, E- EW. This is a story that I wanted to tell you about, just to piggybacking off of how you get like into the right mindset before a hockey game. But before hockey games at Eastern Washington University, my wife, girlfriend at the time, but wife now, thought that I was crazy because I would seriously just sit in the stands before anybody got there for an hour and just stare at the ice, and there was nobody there. It was just me. It was just me, but it was like I was watching a movie though, and like I would just I was a stay-at-home defenseman, right? And so I was
Right.
actually listening to the song. I would listen to the song "In the Land of the Pigs, the Butcher is King." Yeah, that's the name of the song. It's
I
by
don't
it's
know
by
that one.
Meatloaf. It's by
By
Meatloaf, the guy that
Meatloaf?
did Bad Out of Hell. Yep, yep,
I
yep.
I'm actually I love Meatloaf. Like growing up, I really loved Bad Outta Hell too, and but I've never heard of that song.
Oh, really? See, dude,
Yeah.
I thought that album was really underrated. Yeah, the original Bad Outta Hell album was like every song is good, but like you've heard every song on the radio a million times. But like I think a lot of his musicianship and kind of like his darker side came out in the sequel to that. But the threequel, Bad Out of Hell 3. That's the
Mm.
one that this song is on. Yeah, this song is it's
Oh,
like
okay.
halfway through the album and it's so heavy metal, man. It's great. It's a really good
Cool.
song.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
honestly,
I
it's
would
funny
listen
how
to
you
that
missed
and
them. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Didn't mean to
yes, I just one more thing to finish up, and so I got and so I would I would use that song and just stare at the ice for seriously an hour and just like play and play it on repeat and imagine myself just perfectly making the right making the right hits, like perfectly checking somebody,
yeah.
and like all the plays that I was responsible for making, I would visually just physically watch it, and then when I step on the ice, it's almost like it's like it's a fantasy that already happened in my head, and I just go turn it into a freaking reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's how a lot of things happen, right? You need to see it in your mind's eye, and that's kind of where our
Hmm.
goals come from. And that's where creative visualization comes from. And it's a big part to
Yep.
anybody's success. You have to know where you want to go in life to get there. And that's why we created a company called 5 Year You, because it helps you stretch out your vision 5 years from now of your perfect way of being. You're perfect, not anybody else's, starting with the soul and working outwards. And then that way you're able
Yep.
to, when you have that vision, you're able to move towards it with more authenticity.
Hmm. And sorry, that was the whole reason I brought that I brought up that audiobook in the first place, was because that's how I fall asleep. Getting my mind off of falling asleep, and we're talking about counting
Oh, that's
sheep and
great.
stuff.
That's a great way to fall asleep. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I've
Well, and especially if it's something that you've already read before, because then it's I'm not learning anything new really. It's all things that like I've already kind of learned from John Maxwell, and things that it's like, just the things that you and I are talking about right now, and it's just reminding me of concepts that I know have helped me in the past with business, with with whatever. So
Hey everyone, Coach Taylor Milton here. Welcome to Skullbells TV, the official YouTube channel of supersetyourlife.com, where you're going to discover a weekly upload of quick and easy to follow workout tutorials featuring Coach Colt, myself, or one of our athletes to keep your workouts fun, practical, and effective. Our family's latest keto carnivore recipes that fuel Colt's competitions and keep myself and our kiddos strong and healthy. Video uploads of the supersetyourlife.com podcast, now over 100 episodes. Your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym, and much more. Last thing before we get into the video, we're asking a big favor from you. This has been working beautifully, so if you would please think of someone you care about that would benefit from this video, go ahead and smash that like button, click the share button, and text this video to them. That would mean the world to us. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more exciting content from Skullbells TV, because our team has lots of meat and lots of muscle coming your way, and I promise you won't want to miss it. When you hit the subscribe button, you'll see a bell icon pop up. You want to click that too so you're notified every time we release a new video. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world to us. Every like, share, and subscription helps our channel grow and supports our family's hard work. So thank you so much for doing your part too. That's all we ask. God bless you, and please enjoy this video.
So you said we're okay. So we're totally gonna switch gears now. Something else that you said
Okay.
on the other interview that was that I thought was pretty impactful was that crying is important for
Yeah.
emotional stability, like crying. And I'm a
Yeah.
full grown man, and I cried twice last week actually. And I don't know if we'll talk about that or not, but I'm just kind of
I
curious
cried once today.
if you can elaborate. What's that?
Yeah. I said I cried once today already. It happens.
Wow.
Yeah. So
So this is something healthy. It's not something that we should be hiding, you believe?
oh God, no, no. I think like so can I maybe I'll go back and I'll preface this just a little bit for your listeners to kind of
Yeah, yeah.
understand because coming in and saying that can be it puts up a lot of mental guards for a lot of
Yeah,
us.
like
A
that
lot of yeah.
for sure.
The delay is just catching us a little bit here. That's all. So what I spent a lot of time repressing any kind of emotion, and um, my story goes back to when I was 12 years old. My sister, who I loved and protected my whole life, she has severe autism, and when I was 12 years old, unprompted, she tried to kill me, and then for 2 years after that she would randomly attack me. A lot of times was trying to kill me, and I was living in an area. Uh, Nobody will know Winnipeg probably on your podcast, but Winnipeg is the murder
I do.
capital of Canada, and it's a very
Oh, no kidding.
um, yeah, it's always been kind of perceived as a dangerous place. I don't know if it has the most murders, but it has the most murders per capita, and it's just
Hmm.
kind of been that way, and that's so here I am growing up in this time where it was very scary, but the place where most of us find refuge is in our home. And so what I ended up doing is just like I didn't feel safe anywhere, and then I had to kind of lock that down. And um what ended up happening is all those emotions that I have get locked in my body. They say energy and motion is emotion, emotion, energy, and motion. And when that emotion doesn't flow through you, it
Yeah.
gets trapped in your body. And uh, as that was happening, I just felt more and more like I was getting around people that it's like, you don't express your feelings, you don't express how you feel. It's just kind of stiff upper lip. You are always good. And I wasn't, but I did what a lot of people do. I distracted myself from my emotions. I told you earlier, I spent 30 years not feeling anything. It's because I bored myself with video games and drinking and, whatever I hockey, like just that was probably the biggest emotional release I could get because I was able to get out there and physically let stuff out. And that was nice. But when my concussion happened 7 years ago and I couldn't look at anything or do anything for a very long time, everything started to shift, and my body, the all the things that I could release weren't getting released, and I got sicker and sicker. And then finally, what ended up happening is that it was shown to me that I was going to an acupuncturist because she was really helping me let my they open up your like traditional Chinese meridians, like like TCM, and things were blocked. So we were letting things flow. And I was couldn't eat anything. And I said to her, like I've basically cut down to water and I'm still having digestion issues. That's not right. And it was explained to me that, when your head and your heart are battling, like this is like that's kind of where you'll feel it. And that had to prompt me to do a lot of digging. Which led me to EMDR therapy to deal with the past traumas, which led me to Reiki to deal with some energy stuff, and then Theta healing, which I still go to and I do for other people now. And all of that to say, none of that was in the playbook of my life. That was, all these divine steps. But what I've found from most and this is just, there's no documentation on this. This is just my personal experience, is that when you keep an emotion locked inside of you, it's gonna hurt you in time. It might not hurt you this decade, but it will build up over time and it'll manifest in something bad inside of you if you don't deal with it. And I don't know why we have beat men to the ground into a pulp that we all have to be tough, we all have to be strong all of the time. It's not realistic and it's not fair for us to be like that. When you don't,
Yep.
like, look, if a light bulb's on all the time, it burns out. It has to go on and off for
Mhm.
when you need it. That's the same thing with other emotions. You need to be able to feel what you feel. And yeah, it sucks. It sucks to be sad. But without being sad, you never get to understand higher levels of happiness. And it was only when I could see the beauty of contrast in my life of going, look, you got to feel bad to feel more good. And that's when things started to kind of flow a lot better. And I would say, like, before, I was, my range was like an inch, it's like an inch apart, and I have my hands together for those of you listening. And as I was willing to feel the bad things, the good things also moved higher up. And it's scary, but the thing that gets me through it now is, like, when I cry, when I feel anything that, like, is kind of less than happy, I'm able to see that this is how there's growth happening there. And you have to grow. I saw this quote yesterday. I absolutely love it. It's not attributed to anyone, but I love this. It's like, you have to grow through what you go through. And as you do that, you get to experience higher and higher levels of
Hmm.
energy and joy in your life. That was a long rant. I apologize.
I love it. Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. uh, the, you know who else agrees with you is the wisest man that ever lived, Solomon in Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Uh, there's an occasion for everything, and a time for every activity under heaven, a time to give birth and a time to die, a time to a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. So yeah, there it is, verse 4, a time to weep and a time to laugh. I 100% agree with everything that you just said. I think that's very, 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 very wise. We can get into this state to where, like, we think that something's wrong if we're not happy or if we have to do something that we don't like. And no, it's okay. It's only going to be a couple hours, like, I don't want to do
Yeah.
this either, but we got work to do. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
But sadness too, definitely. Like, nobody likes crying, but I don't know, man.
No,
After you cry it out, sometimes you just feel better.
you do. Here's the analogy
That's
I always
necessary.
use is, I spent my whole life in a in this room, and there was a window behind me, but there was emotions knocking on the door, and I was like, not gonna let them in. I did, I was like, I can't feel sad, I can't experience these bad things, and I think the ego came in and said, well, if we start crying, are we ever gonna stop? And it was like, and I've heard so many people say that, and it's like, yes, eventually you do stop. It may not be in the moment you want, but that just means that you're releasing more, and that's a better thing for you. So here I am pushing on this door, this emotion's like going, you got to feel me. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And then I finally, I gave up on that energy. I let the emotion hit me. It hits me, it flows through me, and it flies out the window at the back a lot faster than I ever thought it was. And I was so afraid that the emotion was just trying to get inside me and stay inside me and never leave, but it just needed to be released. I just had to give up holding myself so rigid to not feeling these emotions. So I know there's going to be people listening to this, and I know when they hear it, they'll think like, "Well, if I just started crying, I don't know if I'd ever stop." You will, and what's going to happen
Mm.
that you're maybe not thinking about is all that energy that you have spent locking down your emotions. and trying not to cry or not to get angry or upset and to try to be quote unquote perfect, suddenly that energy gets freed up for you to do so many other things. And that is something that I don't think we talk about. Like, we always talk
Yeah,
about how
man.
we feel better after we cry, but think about all the energy and thought processes and everything you are expending to keep that emotion from being felt. It's I'm exhausted just talking about it for somebody else, let alone myself. So just let it go. Feel it. We've got so much inside of us from this past few years that we're not expressing, we're not feeling. And the more we can allow ourselves to feel and be compassionate to those people while they feel it is how we heal ourselves and how we heal, the collective.
Hmm. The the punk band that I'm playing in right now, Chevy Walker is the band leader, and he and I actually went to high school together. So we've recently reconnected after 10 years of never talking to each other since high school.
Wild.
But yeah, man, his best friend. He and I were never best friends. I'm a couple of years older than him, but we actually went to high school during the same time, and his one of his best friends just I found out not too long ago committed suicide, and I wonder if why if that's just part of the reason why this is becoming something that is just so common. It's like, wow, that's like the second kid that I've heard of from my school that did that since I graduated, and I was devastated. Actually, he told me yesterday at our rehearsal. He told me in the middle of the day, and like I was seriously devastated. Like I was shocked. I was actually completely heartbroken. Because I knew this
Right.
guy personally too, and I wonder if we don't take the time to to work through our emotions and we just let it build up, that we get to a point to where we're running away from it, and then we don't see it for what it is. It seems worse than it is, and it just feels like there's no escape. I've had points in my life to where I feel like there's no escape, and I have to remind myself that no, it's okay. We're just we're just a little short on bills this month, and we've been there before. God always provides, or it might just,
Exactly.
or it might be something to where I, need to take a step back and just remind myself that things aren't as bad as what they seem like when you're right in the middle of it. But you got to
Yeah.
give yourself that time to cope with it and to get past it. And if you don't ever take that time, then I don't know. I feel like that would be I feel like that would be detrimental to me emotionally.
Yeah. Thank you for being so vulnerable. I think that it is something that um, I think more of us need to be. If I feel like the more we share openly how perfectly imperfect we are and how our lives aren't exactly Instagram shiny, as people like to say, I think we can start to one by one find those authentic connections, those authentic people in our lives. And when you put down the facade, the mask you're pretending that is the real you, and you put it down and you say, look, this is me,
Mask, yeah.
you know, I got problems, I got issues, like you said, like there's bills, there's problems. You don't have to share everything, but even the act of just putting down the mask and saying, I am not perfect. And I'm looking to be with people that aren't perfect, because it is exhausting trying to keep up with everyone who is pretending to be perfect when, I assume nobody is, but we all have to put down our mask one at a time. Uh, so thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry for the loss of that friend of yours. Those are always hard, and if it's any consolation to you too,
Thanks. Yeah.
go ahead. I think that delay just
Oh
kind of
no,
kicked in
yeah.
again.
Sorry, we do
So,
have a little bit. Yeah, we do have a little bit of a delay. That's for sure. I'm sorry, it wasn't super relevant. You can finish that. Just let me know when you're done.
um, something that I don't think gets discussed a lot is dark thoughts, and you kind of alluded, not necessarily said you were having them, but one of the big things I had for the longest time was the dark thoughts. And I'm working a lot on it. I'm reading a lot of books about diet changes. And I've just actually, because the last couple of years were really, really rough. I went on some anti-anxiety depressants, and I'm 2 weeks off of them as of today. So there's still wobbly points that come up, and I believe there is a place for those when you need
Congratulations.
them. Thank you.
Praise God.
But I think what I'm trying to say to whoever listens to this, because I think a lot of us have them. I didn't realize that, I just assumed everybody did and nobody talked about them. And when I finally had the courage to tell my doctor, he's like, how often do you have these? I'm like, I don't know, every other minute, like every hour. I stopped counting years ago. And he's like, okay, well, there is a thing inside of you that's, won't get into all the details of it, but like, basically we need to retrain your brain to do this. And I will say coming off the pills has been very challenging on some days, but there is a place for it. And I'd rather see people in the world getting better and then working on coming off the pills than nothing at all when the time comes. I'm not a doctor or anything like that.
Absolutely.
But I think that's something that a lot of people will not admit to, and I think that's about as open as I can be on that. So you're not
Totally.
alone.
Your your 5-year U plan. That's a personal development company that you co-founded. Sounds
Yeah,
really exciting. Could you tell us about it?
yeah, for sure. It's so 5-year U is our kind of it's our new podcast, but it's also our program. We're new into this, like we just started it this year after talking about it for a few years. We love personal growth and personal development. We've owned many websites before, but this is the first one that I am actively putting myself in front of and saying, okay, I want to help people become the best versions of themselves. That's what I feel I've been called to do and moved to do for sure. And what we do with it, there's a home study kit, but basically what we do is we get to who you truly are and want to be, not for anybody else, not for your family, not for your friends or anyone else in society, but who does Coach Colt want to be at a foundational level? And then we help you build out that, and we'll examine if there's self-study, and then there's like coaching through this. So if you want, we get to examine things like, what is your spirituality, what is your, like, who are you, what do you want to be emotionally, what do you want to be physically, mentally, how do you want to be? And my experience has been, when you deal with when you do the inside work, the outside stuff reorganizes itself. So I'll start to see people, when you know who you are and you know how you want to be, suddenly the right people start showing up, and the people that maybe you're just doing things to impress or whatever, they fall away. They don't leave necessarily, but they're less prevalent in your life. And when you get the right people around you, when you have the right friends, family, community, support, when you know who you are, you can be more intimate with people. And a lot of people will go like, well, you mean like in my, my marriage, or, those relationships? Yes, but you can even be more intimate in a podcast interview with somebody that you've just met an hour ago, because you're coming from your authentic self. And when you come from your authentic self, it just feels right. And so when you know who you are, and how you want to be, the right people come along, and suddenly you start structuring your whole life around what makes sense for you, not what do you need to have to impress everybody else. So you're not trying to get the big white or big black SUV that everybody else has bought this past year to, fit in. You don't care about fitting in. You care about what's the right fit for you. And that's a very big difference. And so then you start kind of creating your life around who you are and how you want to be, because I feel that most of us get caught up in the quote unquote rat race and keeping up with the Joneses and all that stuff. I heard a great line from somebody yesterday. I was in
Yeah.
a course, and the line was, even if you win the rat race, you're still a rat. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
that was good. I like that. It's really, really powerful. So that's what 5-year you is. It's helping you grow to be your best version of yourself. We have a free email that we send out every weekday that is from your future self, and it offers a little bit of, it's like, I don't even know if it's 100 words each one, but it offers a little bit of encouragement, inspiration, some bad dad jokes once in a while if I've written them, but it's the idea is that you're getting an email from your future self.
Oh no,
That is
I got
helping you.
dad jokes in my weekly newsletter. I got
Idea.
I got dad jokes in my weekly newsletter too. Yeah, for sure, man. Do you want to hear my latest one?
Yes, please. Absolutely. Love a good dad joke or a bad one, depending
Okay,
on how
sorry.
people label it. To me,
Let
they're
me
always good.
let me go pull it up. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I tried this new machine at the gym. I used it for an hour, and I just got like super sick. So I'm not sure if it was the Kit Kats, the M&Ms, or the Swedish Fish, but I ran out of money using it first, and then I got sick.
I like
Thankfully,
that.
Planet Fitness is a cheap enough membership. It's only $5 a month, so I can continue to use this gym and this weird machine. Okay. Well, cool. So how do people find up? How do people find out more about your 5-year U plan and your newsletter?
You just For the
Like, where can
newsletter,
you
you
go to
just
sign
go
up?
to 5yearyou.com /future, or you can just go to 5yearyou.com. There's a big button at the top to sign up for it. And yeah, then we just start, you send you the emails, and I've enjoyed getting them because it's just nice to have the idea of, first of all, building a time machine was super easy, but building it and being able to help people get that inspirational message every day during the week. Weekends were pretty good. Most of us get by on the weekends pretty good, but to wake up every morning and see that little message from yourself in the future saying, you're doing the right thing, or maybe we skip that kind of pleather phase that we're going to go through next year, or whatever the case is. Whatever little tidbit
I
that
love
you
it.
get given, it's a nice fun way to kind of keep you motivated as you go through the years. So it's one of the things
Yeah, you
I'm
know what?
most happy about.
I love it. And this stuff, if you're not really into it, this stuff can sound kind of corny. It's like, it's like
Yeah.
we're kind of faking our it's it's almost like a fake it until you make until you make it mentality. But you got to talk yourself into it and out of your mouth. My kind of motivational kick dosage as of lately, just personally, is in the mornings. I'm really into listening to Dr. Kiltz. He goes live every he goes live every single morning, and it's just literally all he does is talk about how great it is to be on the carnivore diet and eat nothing but red meat, water, salt, beef, and eggs, and like how good it makes you feel and stuff, and why it's so good for you, and like what and
Cool.
like latest things that he's reading out of the Bible or praying or whatever. And so it's like it's like I learn like little facts here and there, but yeah, man, it's just great. It's motivational, and it's inspiring. So that's kind of what I've been waking up to in the mornings.
I like that. I like that a lot.
um,
It's a good thing.
yeah, thanks. So what is I was looking at your list of when you're of other podcasts that you're doing, and it looks like you're going to be speaking on a family show, like on a parenting show, Marriage, Kids, and Money. So
Yeah, we
I just got to ask you, man, what's your if you had to give me one parenting tip, just like off the top of your head, biggest lesson you've learned as a parent, what is it? Help me out, because parenting is something I feel like I need a lot of work on, man. We need a lot.
when
I need a lot of work on it because, like, I don't know. I feel like all parents do, but also because you were talking. Well, okay. So you were talking about your sister having autism. Our son's is not near that bad. He is very much high functioning autistic, but
oh,
we
good.
certainly have our we certainly have our battles, and
Oh,
they come and go, and some weeks are better and some weeks are better than others. But yeah, man, just what do you got for me on parenting?
um, I'm getting emotional here. That's good. The thing that I tell every parent is to enjoy it. enjoy the. You mentioned, I think they're 4 and 6. Those years go by fast.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us as
Yep.
parents, we think, you know what, I've got till they're 18 and then they're off to college, and you think it's a long time. It goes by in a blink. And my
Mhm.
advice to every parent out there is enjoy the little things. They are the big things. And the things that you are worried your kid is going to remember, they're not. They're going to remember the one-offs, good and bad. You're not going to get it perfect. You're not meant to. They're not meant to. Giving your kids a perfect life means that you're not setting them up for the things in life after they leave the house. Just be you. You're growing with them. Give yourself permission to grow. You're going to be wrong. Apologize fast when you make a mistake. Explain to them why. Be open, communicate with them. The more you do these things, the more you are open and honest with your kids, the more your kids will be open and honest with you. That's what I got. I
Wow. Wow.
did
That
not
was
think a word of
that was
that. That just
that was
all just
legit.
kind
That
of
was so
flowed
good.
out. Yeah, that was I think that was,
Yeah, man. No. So like
good for me right there.
whenever I have someone really cool like no, no, dude, that was great. Whenever I have somebody really cool like you on my show, I try like in the back of my head, I'm always thinking, oh, okay, wow, like what's going on the front end of the podcast? And I don't know, man. Like that was a good rant. Like that might be it. Between that and then back when you were talking about the mask of the taking off the mask and being perfectly imperfect. Take off the mask and be perfectly imperfect. Yeah,
Yeah, I
no,
like that
that
too.
was fantastic. Thanks a lot for sharing that with me. Um,
Thank you very much
I'm
for having me on.
I'm with you on that. I'm trying to spend more time focusing on on the things that are to be enjoyed, to be that are enjoyable about having a 4-year and 6-year old, and not the things that stress you out about it, because because
Yeah.
there's definitely an element of each, right? And there's always going
Oh,
to be an
yeah.
element of each to some degree. But I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if this is good advice or bad advice or not that I gave to her. But we were on a daddy-daughter date. She's 4 years old. I was playing guitar in the mall and watching her eat cinnamon rolls. I took her to get some cinnamon rolls. I don't eat them because I'm on contest prep. Too much sugar. But she wanted to go into Spencer's at the mall.
Okay.
Do you know what Spencer's is? Do you guys
I
have
know
Spencer's
Spencer's
where
is,
you're at?
yeah, we have them in Canada, yeah. Yeah, we have them.
Yeah, okay. So like super inappropriate for children, right? So she so she takes me in, so she wants to go into the shop because she sees stuffed animals in there. I'm like, okay. So we go and we look at the stuffed animals, and and I'm like, you know what? She's 4 years old. I I I just told her you can come in here until you turn 5, and then you got to stay out of here. And when you're 21, I guess you can come back in here if you really want to. But like these stuffed animals, bro, they I got up close and I looked at them. I was like, oh heck no, they're they're teddy bears, and and one of them was covered in black leather and had a mace on it.
Yeah,
So we we found a different store that was more child appropriate after that,
yeah,
and got
yeah,
like an actual teddy bear.
yeah, find a Build-A-Bear. Yeah, stuff like that. The thing with at that age, the things you know and what your kids know aren't the same thing. So you don't need to worry about that. But yeah, I haven't been in a Spencer's in decades,
Sure.
but yeah, I'm on team Colt for that for that one, to finding a different store. But at the same time, your kid's not going to know. They're not going to remember that or anything else.
Okay, good.
Give
What's
yourself some
your
credit. You're doing good.
what's your outside of the Bible? Outside of the Bible, Bible doesn't count. What's your favorite book? Favorite success book? It could be a motivational book, parenting book, anything, man. Just first one that comes off of your head.
Secrets of the Millionaire Mind was the first kind of book that I probably listened to a dozen times. I still have it on my shelf. I pull it down every other year, and really good energy in it. But it was kind of one of the first money books. I was a financial writer and blogger and stuff, because I really just like writing about money.
Mhm.
But now I know it's all mindset. And this was kind of that first book that was like, doesn't matter, it doesn't matter how many tools you have in the toolkit. If there's a hole in the toolkit, it's all going to run out anyway. So you need to be able to just understand your mindset, get your mind right, get your energy right, and then that'll change a lot of things. And there's a lot of work that sometimes needs to be done around that, but it's definitely it's a really good book.
I love it. My two favorite money books are Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, more so for the
Yes.
mindset, and then Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, more so for his specifics. I just love his
I
views
like
on
those
money.
books too. I have all of those 3 books. Yeah, I Think and Grow Rich has been like it's like that. It's like the mindset Bible, basically. Like it's kind of the first one that ever came out, and it's definitely uh,
Right.
it's definitely like there's a lot
Did you
on
actually
every
like do
page.
the exercise? Did you have you actually like done the crazy stuff that he says you're supposed to do, like go into the mirror and just like talk and just say like
Oh
I
yeah,
can
I
do
do
this, I
mirror
can do
work
this, or
every
I'm
day.
going to be
Yeah.
rich, or like it's been a while, I can't remember.
Yeah,
What's that?
yeah, I said I do mirror work every day on a lot of different levels. But there's all, it's
Wow.
interesting. A lot of the stuff that he does in that book, like the science is kind of catching up to it like 100 years later, and it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, it's
It's
an
legit.
amazing book. Yeah, it's legit. Exactly, you nailed it.
Your brain can't your subconscious mind can't tell a difference between something that is it can't tell a difference between somebody else telling you something and you telling yourself the same thing. So
Yeah.
your conscious mind that'll filter it out. But if somebody says, "Hey, you look good," or if you look into the mirror and say, "I look good," like look at those earlobes. God, those are good looking earlobes. Like that's a silly
I
example,
love that.
but you're but it yeah, but if you hear it from yourself, it's the same thing as if somebody else is saying to you. And so if you're in front of a mirror, it makes it that much more real. It makes it sink in that much more, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Your mind is a fun place to play with once you know the rules and the things you can do. We are feeling people, so if you can create a vivid experience in your mind, which we've all done when we've had bad, scary experiences, but most of us don't use that power for the
Hmm.
things that we want.
Yeah,
And that's one of the things I do every night before I go to bed. I'll close my eyes. I'll do it when I get up in my morning meditation too, because I want to reinforce the life
hmm,
that I want. And that's part of the 5-year you is to be able to kind of close your eyes and go, okay, I am a successful published author. I am helping millions of people every year. I am helping elevate the energy, the consciousness of the people around me, and all of these good things. When you start embracing that, you'll find that you actually accelerate your growth quite a bit faster than just I mean, saying in the mirror is a good thing too, because there's a place for that, but just kind of allowing yourself to daydream and feel what it feels like in that future moment is so powerful. I've had so many instances where that's happened, and it's just the stuff just, I mean, you just accelerate it. It's like watching things at 2x speed. It's pretty cool.
totally. Yeah, I was revisiting Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and he was
Okay.
t- in there's this exercise that he has in there of how you literally just sit in a chair and you have to stop and clear your mind, and it's a meditative practice, and you design this peaceful place, just like this peaceful oasis. And so he
I'm writing
walks you
down
through
the
the
book
steps of
again
like
too,
how
'cause
to do it and how to create this picture in your head.
yeah.
And uh, oh yeah, yeah, it's called Cybernetics, and there's the original version, and then there's a newer updated version. I like the newer updated version better.
Cool. I'll take it up. I know I've heard of it a lot.
Uh,
I'm trying to remember. I read a new book every week or two, like, or 1 or 2 books a week. So sometimes I'm like, I know that name, but I don't know if it's on a list or if I've actually done it
cool.
or read it.
I used to. Everybody says they don't have enough time to read, and then I heard a successful speaker one day say quote a statistic saying that the average CEO reads 50 books a year. I'm like,
Mhm.
wow. Like CEO, if there's anybody that has no time to read books, it's the CEO. And if they can read a book a week, then maybe that's why they're a CEO. You know?
Yeah, it's like they say, leaders are readers. It's just you're always growing. It's so important. It's very, very
Yeah.
amazing when you keep opening your mind to
What's
new
your reading
content.
strategy, John? What Yeah.
My
What's your reading strategy? Do you speed read and then go back and pick it apart, or do you just like read it at one pace, just start to finish, like it's clockwork? But
I so I usually have to repeat things. So my habit is when I'm in the car, I because I do a lot of driving, and I'm like maybe I drive like an hour a day. But I remember I think it was one of Brian Tracy's early books that I listened to that said, if you were to listen to, books while you're in your car, that the average person, I'm gonna make up numbers here, so pardon me, but even if you were in your car for an hour a day, that is 60 hours every 2 months that you're in your car, which is basically a university course. So by the end of, I don't know how many credits you need for university anymore, but you would have like tons and tons of education. So I will go into, I just started tracking my books this year on Goodreads finally. And I go into them and I'm like, I'll listen to everything at 1.5 speed. And then they either kind of get filed into, okay, that was good to know, I need to go back to it, or it'll be that was just good to know. It kind of reinforces what I know from some other books, so maybe I don't need to revisit this one, but I'll usually listen to something
like
a couple of times.
good thing I didn't go buy the actual, like good thing I didn't actually buy the hard copy and waste all this time reading the book, when just like listening through it at 1.5 pace. It's like, okay, great, I got the point, thanks, next book.
Yeah, and the thing I'm trying to give myself a little more permission with too is that I don't have to finish every book. I have a big completion bias, which I'm doing my best to shed, because I don't feel like it's like starting a series on Netflix and you get 3 episodes in, you're like, this is terrible, but now I've got to go through 6 seasons. And I'm just kind of giving myself permission now to be like, okay, I don't need to know I'm getting more to that point with certain things that I know about, where I'm like, I don't need to know the science behind this because I've heard it already on this particular thing. So I just need to know the practical steps that are being offered. And I'm going to trust that what's being offered and is foundation and logic or science or whatever, or reason or whatever, and I'll see how it works for me, or if it's something that's worth me trying. So that's kind of my approach, is go fast, pick out the gems, and come back to it if I feel it's worth keeping.
Yeah, very, very good. Well, my brother, thank you so very, very much for your time on our show. I'm sure that you got a packed schedule after this as well. I am going to go bounce over to the gym. It's leg day. I got a client call, and then rehearsing with Chevy Walker music. So definitely going to be a fun evening. What do you got planned after this?
I'm gonna check on my son and make sure he's okay. And I'll take him. And I've been in a course the last 4 days on a bunch of stuff, so I need to go grocery shopping tonight. I need to go I got to go to Costco of all places on a Monday. So, pray for me.
Nice. Yeah, I'll be praying for you there for sure. I didn't tell you this, but I recorded 2 podcasts today, and so the one that I just published, I actually told an entire story about a family meltdown that we had in Costco, and so. If the people that are subscribed and like listening to every single episode, they will be laughing their butt off at what you just said there. Well, cool stuff, man. So you're active on LinkedIn. You're active on LinkedIn, so I'll put a link there in the notes. Are you on Instagram? Where else can people go to find you?
Yeah, they can find me anywhere with that 5-year FIVE year YOU, just the way it's supposed to be spelled. And we're on like, we have our YouTube, we have Instagram, Facebook, all the things. I'm everywhere, so that's the easiest place to find me.
What's up, everybody? Coach Colt signing off. Just wanted to say thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll catch you on Monday, as always, on episode 257 of the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast. And until then, just want to remind you of 1 Corinthians 6:19. Do you not know that your body is a sanctuary of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you are bought at a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body.